Have you ever been so sure you were alone only to realize something had been listening the whole time? I was 17 when it happened. My parents were out of town for a weekend trip, and I was enjoying the rare peace of an empty house. I had movies lined up, snacks, and my bed set up in the living room so I could fall asleep in front of the TV. It was about 10 p.m. when I first heard it. Not a sound from outside, not a creak from the house settling, no. This was different. It was a voice. Muffled, faint, and coming from inside the walls. At first, I thought it was the TV, so I muted it. The voice was still there. Barely a whisper, but persistent. I froze. All I could hear was my own heart pounding and the scratchy sound of something talking just beyond the drywall. It said my name, my full name. I wanted to run. I should have, but something in me needed to know. I walked through the house slowly, pressing my ear to different parts of the wall. The voice shifted as I moved, as if it were traveling behind the insulation, following me.
"Don't leave," it whispered. "Please, I'm so cold in here."
I grabbed my phone and texted my friend Alex. No answer. I tried calling my parents, but they were out of range. I debated calling the police, but what would I say? Hi, there's a ghost or something talking in my walls? I eventually grabbed a hammer from the garage and walked to the hallway, where the voice was now strongest. I placed my ear to the drywall. The whispering stopped. Silence. Then, 3 slow knocks from the other side of the wall. I screamed and dropped the hammer. I ran to the front door and yanked it open, but stopped. A figure stood at the end of the driveway. Still, not moving, watching. I slammed the door shut and locked it. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the corner of the room with a kitchen knife and all the lights on. The whispering came and went, sometimes soft and pitiful, sometimes angry and hissing. When my parents got home the next evening, they found me on the floor, pale and shaking. I tried to explain, but they didn't believe me. A few weeks later, a plumber came to fix a leaking pipe in the wall near the hallway. When he opened it up, he found something horrifying. Behind the paneling was a tiny compartment, like a crawl space. Inside was a mummified baptismal, frail, curled up. The forensic team estimated the person had died in there more than 20 years ago. No one had ever checked. They never identified the body. I moved out 2 months later and never spent another night alone in that house. But sometimes, when I close my eyes at night, I still hear it.
"Don't leave, I'm still here."
Have you ever heard a knock on your window when you live 14 stories above the ground? I wish I was joking. I wish this was just some urban legend I read online, but I lived through it, and every time I think about it, my stomach knots up like it's happening all over again. It was last summer. I had just moved into a high-rise apartment in the city, one of those modern buildings with floor-to-ceiling windows and sleek designs. My parents had helped me move in, but I stayed alone that first weekend. I loved it quiet, clean, and most importantly, mine. That Saturday night, I was up late watching a movie on my laptop. It was past 1 a.m. when I heard the knock. At first, I thought it came from the hallway door. I paused my movie, pulled off my headphones, and waited. Knock, knock, knock. But it wasn't the front door. It was coming from behind me. From the window, my stomach dropped. That window led to a sheer drop, overlooking a narrow alleyway. No balcony, no fire escape, no ledge wide enough for anyone to stand on. I slowly turned around. Nothing was there, just the city lights and my own reflection in the glass. I forced a laugh, tried to shake it off as my imagination. I even walked up to the window and looked out, trying to be brave. My heart was racing, but I didn't see anything. I turned off the lights and went to bed. At 3:12 a.m., I woke up to the knock again. Knock, 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 3 perfectly spaced taps. I sat up in bed, sweating. The window was on the opposite wall, still shut. But now I could feel something like I was being watched. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and aimed it at the glass. Again, nothing. But then I saw it, a handprint, pressed against the outside of the glass. Fresh, smudged, human. I screamed and scrambled back. I called building security and begged them to come check. They were polite but skeptical. When they finally showed up 15 minutes later, they found nothing. No footprints, no sign of forced entry, and no handprint. They must have thought I was crazy. The next night, I made sure the blinds were shut tight. I left the TV on low, trying to drown out the memory of that sound, but it didn't matter. At 2:46 a.m., the knocking started again. This time it was faster. Knock, 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 knock. I didn't open the blinds. I just lay there, frozen. The knocking didn't stop. It went on for 7 minutes straight. Not once did it slow down. The next morning, I was a wreck. I called my mom crying. She insisted I was just stressed, maybe hallucinating from lack of sleep. But I know what I heard. I know what I saw. On the fourth night, I installed a camera facing the window. I didn't sleep. I just waited. And right on cue, just before 3 a.m., the knocking started. When it ended, I checked the footage. What I saw still haunts me. The video showed my living room, dimly lit. At 2:57 a.m., a shadow passed across the window on the outside. It paused, then something humanoid leaned forward and tapped 3 times on the glass. Its face was pale, its eyes sunken, its mouth stretched into a grin too wide to be human. Then it vanished. The camera glitched. A second later, it was gone. I moved out 3 days later. I never found out what it was. No one else in the building reported anything. And when I tried to show the video to my friend, the file was corrupted static. No sound, no image. But every once in a while, late at night, I still hear it. Knock, 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 even when I'm nowhere near the 14th floor. Story 3. The room that wasn't there. Have you ever lived in a house so old it creaked even when no one moved? I used to think the sounds were just part of its charm. That was before I found the door. It was 2 summers ago. My parents were out of town for a week, leaving me to house sit. It was a colonial-style house built in the 1,800 stall ceilings, narrow hallways, drafty floors. I grew up there. I thought I knew every inch of that place. I was wrong. The third night they were gone, I was walking upstairs to grab my charger. As I reached the top step, I heard something slide behind the wall, like a chair scraping a wooden floor. But the room behind that wall was empty. In fact, there wasn't supposed to be a room there at all. Curious, I knocked gently on the wallpapered section of the hallway. It echoed. That wasn't right. I pressed my ear to it. Silence. Then I swear, I heard something faint, like breathing, just once, then nothing. The next morning, I brought up a flashlight and started tapping on the walls, section by section, and that's when I found it. A rectangular outline, almost invisible under the old wallpaper. I peeled it back and uncovered a thin wooden door with a rusty latch. No handle, just a pull ring. I'd walked past that spot for years and never noticed. I hesitated. Something in my gut told me not to open it. But curiosity won. Inside was a narrow staircase, descending into darkness. Now here's the part that still messes with my head. The door was upstairs. So where the hell could stairs down lead to? I stepped in. The air was musty and cold, like a basement that had been sealed for decades. The stairs creaked under my weight, but I kept going. At the bottom was a room maybe 8 by 10 feet. The floor was wood, the walls were brick, and in the middle sat a child's rocking horse, dusty and still. The moment I stepped in, my flashlight flickered. Then it died. I stood frozen in the pitch black. And that's when I heard the voice. A whisper. A child's whisper. Right behind me.
Play with me.
I ran. I nearly broke my neck scrambling up those stairs. I slammed the door shut, pushed a shelf in front of it, and tried to catch my breath. But the whisper kept repeating in my head. Play with me. Play with me. Play with me. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't go near that hallway. I tried to convince myself it was all in my head. That I imagined the whole thing. Until the next night. I was in bed, finally dozing off, when I heard the soft creak of wood from upstairs. I stayed still, listening. Then, a second sound. The faint sound of a rocking horse moving. Back and forth. Back and forth. Back and forth. I told myself it was just the house settling. Wind. Anything. Until I heard the whisper again. Clear. Right outside my bedroom door.
Let's play.
I screamed. I grabbed my keys and ran out of the house barefoot. I didn't even look back. The next day, when I brought my uncle to check it out, the door was gone. The wall was flat again, like it had never been there. I showed him the peeled wallpaper. Nothing. I checked my phone flashlight, it worked fine. I know what I saw. I know what I heard. But somehow that room, it vanished. When my parents got home, I asked them if there had ever been a storage space or secret passage upstairs. My mom went pale. She said when I was a toddler, I used to talk about a friend named Milo who lived in the wall. I had no memory of it. None. But since that week, I swear I feel eyes watching me when I'm alone. I haven't stepped foot in that house alone since. And sometimes, just on the edge of sleep, I still hear it.
Let's play!
Do you have security cameras in your home? I used to think they'd make me feel safer. Now I avoid them like mirrors at midnight. It started when my parents went out of town for a weekend getaway, and I volunteered to stay back and watch the house. I was 22, old enough to handle myself, or so I thought. We have 4 cameras inside the house. 1 in the kitchen, 1 in the living room, 1 pointed down the hallway, and 1 outside the front door. All of them connect to a free app on my phone. That first night alone was normal. I ordered pizza, watched some dumb horror movie, and fell asleep on the couch. Around 3:00 a.m., I woke up to my phone buzzing. A motion alert from the hallway camera. I tapped it open lazily, expecting to see our cat moving around like usual. But it wasn't the cat. It was a man. Standing halfway down the hall, facing the camera, perfectly still. My heart dropped. My stomach flipped. He was tall, shirtless, barefoot. Just standing there. His head tilted slightly, like he was listening. The feed froze. I leapt off the couch and ran to lock every door in the house. I checked every room, every closet. Nothing. No one. The hallway was empty. I told myself it was a glitch, a playback error. Maybe a ghost of some older footage that accidentally got uploaded. But something about the man's posture, the lighting, it felt real. I stayed up the rest of the night, watching the live feed. Nothing happened. The next night, I decided to record everything on my computer using screen capture, just in case. Again, I fell asleep on the couch. And again, at 3:00 a.m. sharp, my phone buzzed. Another motion alert. Same camera. I opened the app and froze. This time, the man was closer to the camera, standing at the end of the hallway, facing my bedroom door. He wasn't moving, just staring. Then, slowly, he raised one hand and pointed toward the camera. The feed cut out. I ran to my room, turned on every light, and locked the door. I called the police. They came, swept the house, and found no sign of forced entry. No one in the house. All doors locked. All windows sealed. I showed them the footage from my computer, but it didn't show the man, not even a flicker. The officer gave me a polite but skeptical look and told me to get some sleep. Maybe I was dreaming, or the app had a bug. That's what I wanted to believe too. But the next night was the worst. I set up all the cameras, double-checked the locks, and went to bed with a kitchen knife under my pillow. And like clockwork, 3:00 a.m. buzz. Motion detected. This time, I didn't open the app. I just listened. For a full minute, nothing. Then I heard the soft creak of the hallway floorboards. Then, a knock. 3 soft knocks on my bedroom door. Not hard, not threatening. Just confident. I held my breath. My hand shook as I reached for the knife. Another knock, then silence. I waited until sunrise before I opened that door. Nothing was there, but the hallway smelled strange like rust and old sweat. That morning, I deleted the camera app. I took down every camera. I couldn't take it anymore. When my parents came home the next day, I played it cool. I didn't want to sound insane, but that night, my mom asked me something that sent chills through me. "Hey," she said, frowning. "Did you bring a friend over while we were gone?" "No." "Why?" "Because our neighbor across the street saw a man standing in the upstairs hallway, just watching the street. Around 3:00 in the morning." I laughed it off. Said it was probably a shadow or something, but deep down, I knew whatever was in those camera feeds, whatever was in the house, wasn't just a glitch. It knew it was being watched. And now, so do I. Story 5. Someone was living in my attic. Have you ever heard footsteps above you when you live alone? That's how it started. Not with a scream, not with a crash, just soft, rhythmic footsteps above my ceiling. In the attic. At first, I assumed it was mice. Or maybe squirrels. That's what people tell themselves, right? We want the scary sounds to be explainable. But the sounds weren't skittering. They were footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Human. I live in a small single-story house that I inherited from my grandparents. No roommates, no pets, no neighbors close enough to hear through the walls. I'd been there for over a year without issue. Peaceful. Quiet. But last fall, things changed. I started noticing little things out of place. Not big things, just enough to make me question myself. A kitchen drawer left open that I swore I closed. Food missing from the fridge. Lights on in rooms I hadn't been in. I even started finding my front door unlocked in the mornings. I thought maybe I was sleepwalking or losing my mind. Then came the night I finally heard them. It was around 1:30 a.m. I was watching TV when I heard a soft thump from above, followed by a second. Then, slow, pacing footsteps, crossing the ceiling from one end of the house to the other. I froze. Every hair on my body stood on end. I muted the TV. More footsteps, now directly above the living room. I grabbed a flashlight and a baseball bat, heart pounding, and climbed onto the kitchen counter to open the attic hatch. As I pushed it open, dust rained down on me. I aimed the flashlight inside. Nothing. Just insulation. A few cardboard boxes and darkness. I pulled myself up, shining the light into every corner. No footprints, no signs of life, no smell, no sound. I laughed nervously and climbed back down. Maybe the wood was expanding from temperature changes. Maybe I was paranoid. But then, 3 nights later, I found food wrappers in the attic. Candy bars. Cans of soup. And they weren't old. Some were the exact same brands I'd bought that week. I didn't have raccoons. I didn't have ghosts. I had someone. I called the police. They searched the attic. Nothing. No one. They said it might be a prank, or a squatter that left before I noticed. "Keep your doors locked," one officer said. "Maybe install cameras." I installed cameras, 2 inside the house, 1 in the living room, 1 in the hallway, and 1 pointing toward the attic hatch. That night, I didn't sleep. And at exactly 2:12 a.m., I got a notification, motion detected living room. I opened the feed. There he was, a man crawling down from the attic hatch, slowly, calmly, barefoot, thin, wearing filthy jeans and a hoodie. He dropped to the floor silently, looked around, and walked into the kitchen. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. Then I saw him grab something from the fridge, leftovers, and eat it with his bare hands, like an animal. He didn't use a fork. He didn't heat it up. He stood there, chewing in the dark. Then, as if sensing the camera, he looked straight at it. I slammed the app shut and called 911, whispering that there was a man in my house. The dispatcher told me to lock myself in the bathroom. I obeyed. I listened for footsteps. None. The cops arrived 10 minutes later. They swept the house. The man was gone. But they found his things in the attic, a blanket, water bottles, a knife, and a small notebook filled with writing about me. Pages and pages of notes, what time I woke up, what time I showered, what I watched on TV, what I said on the phone. He knew everything. The scariest part? The police said he probably lived there for months. They think he was sneaking down at night, eating, watching me sleep, and going back up before dawn. I moved out the next day. I couldn't spend one more second in that house. I never caught his name. I never learned how he got in, but I think about him every night before I fall asleep, wondering how many others like him are out there, hiding above your ceiling, just listening.